Okay, in this video you're going to see Newton and I repair our compost pile. Um, I don't use city water because I don't want the chlorine in it to interfere with my whole project of nurturing bacteria. That is creating a habitat where bacteria are going to thrive because the chlorine will kill them. So I use rainwater. But the other day, too much rain fell, or it kind of soaked the um, the compost pile, and so it was like dousing a fire. The temperature in the compost pile went right down, and I think it was pretty clear that air couldn't circulate properly because there was too much water. There has to be just a film of humidity on the leaves and on all of the other compost material, but they can't be wet or else air just can't flow. So I'm going to turn the whole pile this time, and add a couple of things. We'll add some dry leaves to it, and put back in the cylinders of steel mesh to let the air flow through it. And one other addition you'll see is going to add to the very bottom of the pile on the ground, just some steel mesh that will allow any water that seeps through, any rainwater that seeps through, to flow out from the bottom. So there'll be air right on the bottom. And also some twigs and branches from some bushes that will also help, yeah, add a little more airspace inside the compost pile. By the way, this worked. A few days later, the temperature was back up, and everything was good again. At the same time, while I go through it, it's really for me interesting to see the life that is already taking hold in the compost pile. I find some worms, some tiny worms that were obviously well. Here's one coming now. Tiny worms that were uh, uh, the progeny of the descendants of the few worms that I put in there in the first place. Also, some other bugs and are there. So they're they're it's they're thriving now. The other part of this, while this is rolling, I want to talk about an insight or a change that has come over me. Insights that have come through researches in medicine and soil, the human microbiome and soil biome. That is, those are the studies of microbes that live in environments, and of course, microbes live in environments all over the place. We just normally can't see them. We can't see what's going on under the soil without disturbing it, and we can't see what's happening in our gut without disturbing that. But now we know that there's a lot happening in both places, and they're related. So that's that's something that we have to that I should talk about, because it should change our relationship with the soil, with the food that we grow, and with just the environment around us and in us. The area around the root system is called the rhizosphere, and plants secrete in the rhizosphere into the rhizosphere. Plants secrete sugars and carbohydrates, proteins that the bacteria then uh, uh, eat, break down, and they in turn are eaten. Those bacteria are eaten by other microbes that, through the fungi, return to the plant, um, uh, not other nutrients in a form that the plant can use them. So uh, uh, they they bring elements and molecules, make them available to the plant so that the plant can protect itself, heal itself, and grow. So that's called the rhizosphere, and researchers have made the analogy that holds very well, that the rhizosphere is really the guts of the plants, like the human gut. It's the guts of the plants. It's where the plant feeds. But what's interesting is that the plant doesn't feed itself. It relies upon a whole range of symbiotic relationships with microbes, from bacteria and to the things that that feed upon bacteria, to the things that protozoa and nematodes and things, to the things that feed upon them and that are injected through fungi into the back into the plant that the plant uses. Well, this is very much what happens inside the human gut, which we know now that um, the human gut is a very complex system of symbiotic relationships with many different organisms. In fact, many of the same organisms, related organisms, and in some cases the same organisms that are living in the soil, and that feed as they feed the plant, those um, microorganisms also break down the food that we ingest, make it available to our body in similar ways as the rhizosphere and all of the relationships that exist in the rhizosphere make uh, food, nutrients available to the plant in the form that it can use it. Same thing we need. We need things in the form that we can use them. We can't just ingest anything. We have to ingest things that the plants that the our microbiome, that is all of the bacteria and protozoa that live inside of us, can break down and make available to us in ways that we can use them. Now, this gets even more interesting when, as scientists have noticed that, for instance, there can be a direct relationship between the rhizosphere and the human gut. Japanese people, for instance, have in their gut bacteria a gene sequence that is the same, presumably transferred from the rhizosphere of seaweed that break down a material for the use of the seaweed that is then eaten by fish that Japanese people feed upon, and seaweed as well. So the actual bacteria or at least elements of the bacteria, genes in the bacteria are directly transferred and are identical, so that Japanese can profit from, you know, uh, this the same bacteria that are breaking down plants. So there's a relationship that is even more complex and more um, circular. And in appreciating all of this, it adds a new light and importance to to this idea of composting, using this compost to make sure that the soil has the greatest diversity possible of bacteria and and uh, and all of the microbes that are necessary uh, for the plant and that will be necessary for us and and for the animals and plants that we consume. So this is just one more element in this complex question of why compost is important. Why compost is important in in terms of regenerating the soil, revitalizing the soil, bringing life back into the soil, not just in your backyard, but everywhere. So uh, uh, now we'll follow that up again in part 5.